You're listening to the Adventure Sports Podcast. Thanks for adventuring with us as we discover what incredible athletes and outdoor enthusiasts are doing all over the world. Now here's your host, Kurt Linville.
Hey friends, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. A while back, I asked a question which was about how to get a little bit more two-way community going with the Adventure Sports Podcast. We have such an amazing resource of people all over the world who love the outdoors, who love adventures, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could visit with each other and learn from each other and maybe even meet up and do adventures together? So I said, should we start a Discord server? And I got a positive response from you folks saying, yeah, Discord would be cool. So finally found the time and did it. There is the Adventure Sports Podcast Discord server. By joining us on Discord, you would be able to chat with each other, even make phone calls to each other, post pictures, talk about adventures, shoot, maybe even people would like to meet up somewhere for adventures. So great resource for the Adventure Sports Podcast community. And I believe you have to have an invitation to join the server. So that's done via a URL, which I'm going to put in the show notes. I know that often when you listen to a podcast, you don't look at the show notes. This time you need to look at the show notes so you can click the URL to join our Discord server. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'll see you there. Today, we're going to be talking about epic paddling, kayaking, canoeing, big trips with John Connelly. And John's main focus for many, many years has been encouraging other people to get into the outdoors and have their own epic adventures because of all of the value that brings to life and also to the natural environment. So John has two books. Dying Out There Is Not an Option. And that book is from about 9 years ago. And then there's a second new book that just came out. If we're going to die, it's probably here. John, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Curtis. I'm delighted to be here.
So I have to say, there's a lot of death in these titles. Are you trying to scare people away from the woods?
Well, my first book, Dying Out Here Is Not an Option, that title was inspired by my wife, actually.
Okay.
Because for my 60th birthday, everybody was saying I should do something special. I should do something big. And I was pretty much in age denial. It was like, it's just another number, another birthday.
Right.
I'm not going to make a big deal out of that. But then my incredible wife, Nicole, said, you really ought to do something big for your birthday. And I was like, okay. And I'm pretty sure she was thinking maybe take her to Italy, but
somehow it turned into something else.
Oh yeah, it did. Because for years I had wanted to kayak the Main Island Trail.
Yes.
And I had always wanted to canoe the Northern Forest Canoe Trail. So I thought, well, here's my opportunity. I could paddle both those trails, and to make it really epic, I could connect them with the St. John River and the Bay of Fundy. And so that'd be 1,500 miles. And I'd probably do it in about 75 days. And so I pitched the idea to my wife. She's like, what, not Italy? And I'm like, no, not Italy. And she said, okay, I'm fully supportive of you, but there are two conditions. One is I need to know you're safe at the end of every day. And the second condition is that you're not allowed to die. So there was some very sketchy moment out there over that 75 days and those 1,500 miles where I literally reminded myself of my pledge to her not to die out there.
Wow.
So that's...
So you did this journey solo?
Yes. Yeah. It was 800 miles by canoe and 700 miles by sea kayak.
I think anytime you are in nature, in the wilderness, in the woods, on the rivers, you name it, but if you're solo, extra caution is required. There's no one there to help or to call for help.
That is an absolute fact. And there's a lot of soul searching that you do in the process too. And you're constantly reassessing your risk for your tolerance for risk. And,
yes.
And that has a lot to do with the environment you're in, the physical and mental condition that you're in, and all of those things. So there's plenty of opportunity for things to go wrong. And so, yes, you do have to be extra vigilant when you're out there by yourself.
Well, and not to mention that it can be really, really hard work, too, when you're doing things solo. I mean, I imagine there were some, do you call it portages or portages?
Portages and carries.
Okay, so portages and carries. when you're doing that solo, that can be easy.
No, it's not. It's really not. And some of the portage and carries were over improved surfaces. So I actually had wheels with me for my
Nice.
canoe and also for my kayak. And that of course makes going down the road or going down the improved surface much more easily, because then you just put your pack on and you have other things in your boat that you tow behind you. However, over the unimproved surfaces and some of the
right.
very difficult and long portage where you can't use the wheels, you have to carry the wheels also in addition to everything else. So it was really, really super important to go with a super lightweight boat, and all of my gear pared down to the essentials, everything I absolutely need but nothing more, and go as light as possible so that portages I would only have to make one trip. I wouldn't have to take my gear and then go back and get my boat, or vice versa.
Wow. So will you, just to get us into the setting, will you summarize this adventure? And then we also want to hear about the one in the Florida Everglades too. But let's do your 1,500-mile one first. What did you face? That sort of thing.
Yes. So let me describe the route first. Okay. The route. The first leg of it was the Northern Forest Canoe Trail, and that is a network of Native American water trails going watershed to watershed. And that, of course, back then is how they traveled, because there were no roads. And
right.
So they used water for travel. And so you go from watershed to watershed, and it starts in Old Forge, New York, in the Adirondack Mountains, and heads north and goes up Lake Champlain, up the Missisquoi River into Quebec, and then back down Lake Memphremagog into Vermont, then across Vermont, across New Hampshire, into western Maine, and then all the way up to the top of Maine in Fort Kent. So that's 740 miles.
Wow.
And that was, I think, 55 portages and carries, totaling 60 miles, I think. And there was 160 miles of upstream travel. So that was a combination of paddling upstream where I was able, tracking the boat upstream, which is getting out of the boat and pulling it upstream through the rocks. So there was a lot of upstream travel involved in that as well. But once I got to Fort Kent, Maine, I wanted to connect to the Main Island Trail, but I was still 385 miles away from that. So I had to go down the St. John River and down the Bay of Fundy in New Brunswick, and then continue from Lubec, Maine, down the 375 miles of the Maine coastline to the border in New Hampshire. And so that was the route. That was the route. So when talking about the various conditions that I encountered, I wanted to get going early in the season because I wanted to take advantage of high water from spring snowmelt and spring rains. There was the weather got warm unexpectedly early in the Adirondacks, and they had the second earliest ice out on the lakes up there in, I think, recorded history. So it was exceptionally early. It was April 16th that I got started. And I started a week after the ice went out, because when the ice is freshly out, all you need is a couple of cold nights and it'll freeze up again.
Back.
So I didn't want to get stranded on an island in a lake someplace. So I waited till the water had warmed up enough so that would not be as much of a concern. And so starting April 16th, I struck out, and it was really nice when I started, weather-wise. But of course, nature has a way of evening things out. So I knew that as warm and nice as it was when I began, probably going to get pretty cold and nasty later on. And that did come to pass. And so there were mornings when I woke up and all of my wet paddling gear was frozen stiff as a board, and I had to warm it up with my body heat to get it pliable enough to put it on. Some mornings my gear was covered in snow. I experienced whiteout conditions with snowstorms on lakes. And
oh, man.
As a matter of fact, I start the book with an episode that occurred on Mooselook-McGunnock Lake in Maine. And it was a nice calm morning. but it was really dank. And, the air was laden with moisture, and it was very dreary and overcast. And there was a cold front supposed to come in later in the day, but it was going to be later in the afternoon, and it wasn't forecasted to be particularly strong. So I started to cross the lake, and it was many hours before the front was supposed to come through. So I had plenty of time. And because it was not windy at all, I took a beeline course across the lake, an open water crossing of about 6 miles, instead of what I would do if there was an impending weather event or a lot of wind, which would be in this open canoe, this expedition canoe loaded with gear. It would be to take the upwind shoreline and hug the shoreline to stay out of the wind and waves.
Right. So the shore gives you a little bit of a windbreak.
Yeah, it gives you a windbreak. The shoreline does. And but that's a much longer way. So I thought I'd just do a beeline straight across the lake. And I got about 2 miles in, and literally I could hear it before I could see it. And the wind came. Oh. And the waves jacked up to about 3 feet, and I had white caps. And I had to hit my boat away from the breaking waves in order to keep the waves from breaking into the boat and filling me up. I was unable to take a direct line to the nearest safety, the lee side of the shoreline, because that particular angle, my boat was taking on water from the waves.
Oh, no.
So I had to maintain the boat angle that I had to stay dry, or my best chance of staying dry, and continue paddling all the way across that lake. Well, it started to rain, and the rain turned to sleet, and the sleet turned to snow, and it was an absolute whiteout. And I was basically using the direction of the wind and the angle to the waves to maintain my direction across the lake, and got to the other side. And the water was in the high 30s. I mean, it was not the kind of thing where you want to go for a swim. Even wearing a dry suit and having the appropriate layers underneath. Out there by yourself, you just don't want that to happen. So
John, people always give us the details like you just did. So I did this, so I did that. And it's wonderful. But I know that inside of your chest, something else was going on. What did this feel like, knowing that I really messed this one up?
I know it. Well, the first thing that came to mind was that dying out there was not an option, so I had to figure it out. And I really needed to summon my skills and experience as a whitewater kayaker and whitewater canoeist. And I'm very, very comfortable in difficult whitewater situations. And
good, yeah.
And there's just a part of me that puts everything into slow motion, even though it's not. And I seem to be able to calm myself and manage the situation. And that's really what I did. I don't allow myself to get tense. When you get tense, you lock into your boat. And when your boat's rocking around side to side, if you get tense, then your upper body is almost like a pendulum swinging back and forth over the center line of your boat. And so it makes you less stable. So you have to stay relaxed and have very fluid hips and allow the boat to move underneath of you. Getting all tensed up is just really works against you. And I'm pretty good at staying calm under pressure. But once I got
what's the trick for that?
Through the whole thing, it was like, oh my God.
Then you can feel it. So I've talked to a lot of people who kind of like the pressure of, okay, I'm in a bit of a pickle. I've got to overcome the challenge. I've got to stay focused. There's something about that pulls us, into what some people call the flow, right? Or you just get so focused on the one thing. And some people like that feeling so much they go looking for it. Other people try to avoid it. But what's your advice? I mean, panicking is not an option because then dying becomes an option, right?
Yes.
So
exactly.
What is your advice to people to have the right mindset?
Well, I think that it has a lot to do with your skill base and your experience. When you become engaged in an outdoor adventure sport, don't start in the middle, start at the beginning.
Right.
So that you are building on these novice experience so that you're your body and your brain understand what is difficult and what is a true threat. And if you start to calibrate yourself that way in situations that are not as consequential, why then that's a learning. And then you can build on that by challenging yourself with more and more difficult situations. Hand in hand with that, you need to have all of the self-rescue skills. So
right.
You need to be able to take care of your mess if you create one all by yourself, and be confident in doing that and having those skills. Because too many people have the ambition to do the difficult thing, but don't have the foundation of the skill base and the experience to support that level in the activity. And sometimes they don't have the rescue skills at that level in the activity. And so then they can get in trouble. So I say, start at the beginning, not the middle, and build your skills, your experience, and your confidence along the way. And then you'll really feel and understand the difference between stressful situation, challenging situation, and something that's unsafe or dangerous. And you build your own tolerance for risk based upon, that solid foundation.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So we have listeners all over the world, John, and some of them are from warm climates, and they probably don't appreciate all of the dangers that you were encountering in this little story that you told us about crossing this lake. So what are the dangers, just so people understand? And they're very significant. I mean, this is the real deal. So what were you really up against?
Yeah, in that particular instant, and there were similar ones too along the way. In that particular instance, some of the factors were that it is an incredibly remote area. So if I got in trouble, there was nobody there to help. And I was there early season. There was nobody else on the water. It was literally not until I got on at the end of the Allagash Wilderness Waterway in Maine, almost finished with the trip, finished with the Northern Forest Canoe Trail.
Right.
I was probably I was well over 700 miles into the trip, and I had not seen another boat on the water. Okay, so there's nobody out there with me to help me if I get in trouble.
Sure.
Okay? So I'm there early season. The ice had just gone out, so the water is extremely cold, and you don't last long in icy water. Your body and your mind begin to shut down after a certain period of time, so you become unable to help yourself.
And that's because of hypothermia.
It's hypothermia, absolutely.
Yeah,
100%. And so I wore a dry suit to keep myself dry. That's better than a wetsuit, because you don't have to, with a wetsuit, you have to flood the wetsuit with a layer of water, which initially is pretty chilly. And then the insulation of the neoprene in the wetsuit insulates that layer of warm water next to your skin, and that's what keeps you warm. It's way better to not get wet to begin with.
Sure.
So a dry suit has gaskets around the neck, has feet on it, and has gaskets around the wrists, and you zip into it, and you wear layers of warm clothing underneath it. So that's the insulation, is the layers of warm clothing underneath. And then you've got the protective layer of the dry suit. So having the proper equipment, in the right apparel is incredibly important. But even with that protection against the cold, a prolonged period in that temperature water could easily be fatal. Also, when not going along the shoreline and being out in the middle of a big lake, you're pretty much guaranteeing that unless you can somehow get your boat righted and get back in it, to be mostly out of the water, that it's going to be a really grim situation. So that's a factor. The remoteness from shore, the remoteness from civilization and other people, the cold water, and then, of course, the visibility issue. When the whiteout of snow came, I was not able to see any of the shorelines, and I wasn't able to see very far at all. And that lasted for quite some time. So the visibility and the lack thereof, and needing to maintain my boat angle to keep the water from coming, keep the waves from breaking into my boat and filling me up and sinking me, were all things that I was up against during that crossing.
Hey friends, here at the Adventure Sports Podcast, health is really a priority. That's part of the reason why for over 10 years we've been encouraging people to get out there and have some fun, because when we become more active, it makes us healthier. Our focus on health is one of the reasons that I'm excited about today's sponsor, True Diagnostic. Did you know that your calendar age doesn't always match how old your body truly is? Your biological age, the age of your cells and organs, is actually the number one predictor of your risk for serious diseases like heart disease, cancer, dementia, and more. That's why learning your biological age can be truly life-changing, and that's exactly what the True Age test from True Diagnostic helps you do. It's a simple at-home test. You just prick your finger and then use the provided packaging and a prepaid envelope to send the sample in for testing. No doctor's visits required, no labs, but you'll get great information that can help you to be healthier and understand how you're doing with your own health habits. Now, I always joke that I'm 23 years old. You've heard me say that forever. Obviously, I'm quite a bit older than that, but I'm curious to find out what my biological age is. It's kind of eye-opening when you learn that your biological age, if it's just 5 years older than your actual age, your risk for major diseases can go up by 30 to 50%. That's kind of a wake-up call. But due to epigenetics, and this is the part that really inspires me, up to 90% of biological aging is driven by lifestyle. That means the way that we eat, move, sleep, manage stress, all these things play massive roles in how fast or slow our bodies age. That aligns with the Adventure Sports podcast so much. So I'm taking the test. I'm excited to find out the results. And in addition to my biological age, True Diagnostic also provides a personalized report that's full of science-backed steps that we can all take to slow down aging and improve our health over time. If you care about protecting your health and want to find out what your real age is, head over to truediagnostic.com and use my code ASP to get 20% off your entire order or subscription. That's truediagnostic.com. Use ASP at checkout to get 20% off. Your future self will thank you. Have you heard of the 5 love languages? I believe they're physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, and gifts. And here's the tough part for me. My wife's love language is gifts, and I'm just no good at it. That's why I am really excited about today's sponsor, Uncommon Goods. The holidays sneak up fast, but it's not too early to get your shopping done and actually have fun with it. Uncommon Goods makes holiday shopping stress-free and joyful with thousands of one-of-a-kind gifts that you can't find anywhere else. And I want to stress the one-of-a-kind bit. That's why I like this. After a few years of holiday presents, it starts to feel like there's really nothing that the other person really needs. So I'm always looking for a unique gift that expresses my personality and the recipient's personality in a way that says, I love you uniquely, but that's really hard for me. Uncommon Goods looks for products that are high quality, unique, and often handmade or made in the U.S. Many are crafted by independent artists and small businesses, and because they're made in small batches, the best finds can really sell out fast. But their site is loaded with unique gifts that you're not going to find anywhere else, and this really helps me. Uncommon Goods has something for everyone, from moms and dads to kids and teens, from book lovers, history buffs, and die-hard football fans to foodies, mixologists, and avid gardeners. You'll find thousands of gift ideas that you won't find anywhere else. When you shop at Uncommon Goods, you're supporting artists and small independent businesses. Many of their handcrafted products are made in small batches, so shop now before they sell out this holiday season. And you know how I'm always talking about doing things that matter, that make a difference for others, even in your adventures? Well, I love this about Uncommon Goods. They give $1 to a nonprofit partner of your choice for every purchase. And they've donated more than $3 million to date. That's fantastic. So shop early, have fun, and cross some names off your list today. To get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/ASP. That's uncommongoods.com/ASP for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon goods. We're all out of the ordinary. Yeah, so you had to take the long way home.
Sure
That's
did.
it's kind of funny. I know that there are a lot of listeners out there who've not done cold water paddling, and they're thinking, why? What's the point? And I grew up in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, and we have a scenic river there called the Illinois. Are you familiar with it?
Yes.
So they're outfitters who rent canoes, and many, many, many thousands of people float down the Illinois in canoes every year, and it's a wonderful experience. And I did that as a kid, of course. We did the Illinois River cleanups where we would fill our canoe with trash from the previous season early in the spring and just try to take care of it. Anyway, the point of all of this is there are a lot of people. So when I married my wife, very early in our marriage, we visited Tahlequah, and I said, let's go canoeing. But it was still winter. And so I was just blown away, John, by how beautiful and serene and quiet and non-crowded that river was, because it was wintertime instead of summertime. And we had such a delightful trip, but everyone was shaking their heads at us like, why on earth would you even get near it? It's wintertime out there. Did anyone show you that, or tell you that? And what advice do you have for people who are considering some of this cold weather, cold water paddling?
Well, if it has to be cold weather and cold water in order for you to be able to do it, why then you just need to, take all of the precautions, many of which I mentioned. I'm sure that there are resources out there that you can find for, specifically for cold water paddling. The reason I went that early when it was that cold is because over the course of this 740-mile Native American canoe trail, going watershed to watershed, there was a lot of upstream travel, 160 miles of it. And if I didn't have a lot of flow in the river and they were too shallow to go up, I would have to carry up a lot of that 160 miles instead of paddling up. I'm a much happier paddler than I am a hiker with a boat. So I wanted the high water for that. And I also wanted the high water for the whitewater stretch, because if the water got too low, those would be difficult to navigate as well. And some of them, there's one, the South Branch of the Dead River in Maine. If it's too low to paddle it, you're carrying your boat for 20 miles. And
oh, wow.
So I'd much rather paddle 20 miles than be dragging my boat down a road for 20 miles. So,
yes, but it sounds like it requires a little bit of, different gear, experience. You need to know what you're doing, how to stay safe in cold conditions and wet conditions, like you already described with the dry suit, and all that kind of thing. So what you're saying is the skill set matters if you want to try this sort of thing.
It really does, and preparedness, both in skills and experience, and you also need to pay a great deal of attention to hydration, because your muscles and your body and your brain only work well when you're hydrated. And in cold weather, you don't tend to drink as much as you do in warmer weather. So there's a big emphasis in cold weather paddling to hydrate more than you think you need to in order to be hydrating enough.
Well, we have a kind of a rule that we use in our backcountry exploring in the wintertime in Colorado here, that you look at the color of the snow when you use the restroom, and if you're changing the color of the snow, you need to drink more water. So, if you're writing your name in the snow, that might be a problem.
It's true.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, fantastic. Well, I think it's so beautiful when you're in a pristine place like that. And I always feel like I like it more when I have a buddy with me, or my wife with me, or one of my kids with me, because we can celebrate that beauty together. But there's something about doing it solo that's also magical. How does that strike you? Do you prefer to do it with people or solo, or do you like both experiences?
I like both experiences. I truly do. When I did this 1,500-mile solo expedition, it was such a gift to be able to have the support systems behind me to allow me to be able to do it. My wife, my friends, all the providers of my gear and equipment, and and everybody who was supporting me in the endeavor. To be able to take 75 days out of your life and just go off into the wilderness on your own and do an adventure like this is just a gift. It doesn't happen that often, if ever.
No.
In many lifetimes. So
yes.
So I've done a lot of solo paddling, just never 75 days worth. I love being out there by myself and being in touch with nature and getting in that flow state of just being out there, unencumbered by any of the obligations or intrusion of modern life. I mean, it's very, very special. And on a long trip like this, it's great to have the opportunity to just stop and camp, wherever you're wanting to. And also by going that early, I didn't have competition for campsites, so I literally could camp any place I wanted to camp, which was very, very nice. That was a real luxury. But I do like the alone connection with nature. The ability to share the experience with someone else is very important to me. And what's interesting when I did this expedition is that I had a website and everybody was able to track me in real time online.
Okay, yeah.
And so, I had a Garmin InReach Explorer, and I was transmitting every 10 minutes, for 75 days. And people were able to log into the website and watch my travel in real time. And I grew to understand that it was hundreds of people doing that, if not more.
Wow.
And I was getting messages that, workplace productivity was in the tank and a lot because people were on their computers watching me instead of doing their work. And so when, and I would do posts along the way. So I would post to social media, and I felt like I was sharing the experience with a large following of people. So
Sure.
I felt alone, but I didn't feel lonely, and that was
Interesting.
That was a real treat.
Let me ask you a question about that. Feeling alone but not lonely. So the last few years, I started exploring this part of Colorado on my dual sport motorcycle, and I ride alone. And sometimes I take a GoPro and I put it on the helmet, and then I just talk to the people who might eventually watch it, And then sometimes I leave the GoPro at home. I'm like, I don't want to mess with all of that. I just want to enjoy the ride. They are so different. Each ride is so different to me. And I know you've done solo things when you weren't heavily connected. So can you contrast how that was for you?
Yeah, I think when I'm not connected, it's definitely more of a personal experience, But when I am connected, I'm conscious of the fact that I'm able to share it. And with this expedition in particular, it was an expedition to inspire outdoor desire. I really wanted to have people go along with and experience this. And that's one reason why I wrote the book. Because sharing that experience would inspire more people to get outdoors. And in doing so, that gets more people to care about conservation and stewardship. And that's been a big driver of my entire career, is that whole ethos. So
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So I liked that little one-liner there too, to inspire outdoor desire. Mm-hmm. That is cool. I mean, that's what the Adventure Sports Podcast is all about. From the beginning, we realized the value in encouraging people to connect with nature, and also the physicality of adventure sports means they're being healthier and they're inspired to be healthier. It's not just the exercise you get while you're doing the sport. Right. There's also the thought when you're reaching for that Twinkie, well, wait a minute, how's this going to feel on the trail next time I'm out there? And there's something to it for sure, because you become adventure focused, become health focused. They kind of come together.
They certainly do. And the healthier you are, the more you're able to
enjoy.
And enjoy. Absolutely.
Yes.
And if it's a struggle, it's not fun. So the extent to which you can have your fitness level not just meet but exceed the level that's going to be required for the activities that you want to do, you're going to enjoy them so much more.
I'm hesitating with my wording here, and the reason is because to do a solo experience in what could become hazardous conditions really does require a lot of self-reliance, skill, correct equipment, that sort of thing. I want to encourage people that experience is out there and it can be wonderful, while at the same time maybe saying something along the lines of, eat the elephant one bite at a time, don't bite off more than you can chew, make sure that you've developed your skill set, that sort of thing. But definitely I've had some amazing experiences doing solo adventure sports, but it changes the way I behave and my decision-making matrix. Everything about it changes because you realize it's all on me right now.
Right. Absolutely true. absolutely true. So even on a expedition like this, where I was connected, I wasn't connected all the time. I mean, I did a lot of posting
Right.
to bring people along with me, but I really didn't do much in the way of GoPro video. And quite honestly, it's kind of funny because people say, "Well, we know that you were in 8 to 10 foot seas on the bold coast of Maine,
Wow.
but there are no photos." And I'm like,
Right.
"No, there are no photos."
I'm going to
This,
just sit here for a little while, pull out my camera, and take a shot.
yeah.
Wow.
No, so there were a lot of times where I needed to be by myself and be wholly focused on making good on the promise of not dying out there, and successfully executing what I needed to execute in the moment.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I had plenty of time out there when I was alone. But yes, it's like one bite at a time. Don't try to eat the whole thing. Exactly.
So, John, I'm getting a message here that says that you have other Riverside tabs open on your end, and it says to close them. I don't know if you see that or not.
I saw that early on, and I closed all of them.
Okay, so it's just an old message. We're going to ignore that. I've put a timestamp here so that I can clean this up. I love what Riverside is trying to do. And I worded it that way on purpose. Okay, we'll continue.
Okay.
So the main island trail, I did not know about this trail until just this year. I found out about it. It just wasn't in my purview. But that's the second half of this trip. And I wish we had time to go into more and more detail, but I really want to move along so that we can hear more of the saga, So you just mentioned really big seas. And now you're in a sea kayak, not a canoe. And explain what this is all about.
Right. So in Grand Falls, New Brunswick, my incredible wife, Nicole, met me, and she brought my sea kayak and my sea kayaking equipment for me, and she took my Winona Voyager canoe back home. Okay, so I switched, after the first 800 miles, I switched from the open canoe to the sea kayak, the Stellar S18R sea kayak. And for the reversing falls in St. John, New Brunswick on the St. John River, and for the whitewater that entails, and also for all of the open ocean paddling, I really needed to be in a decked boat, not an open canoe. And so I did all of the traditional canoeing in a traditional canoe, and then I switched over to the sea kayak. So when I entered the Bay of Fundy, it was at the spring high tide of 29 feet.
Wow.
So that's a big rise and fall of the tide in each tide cycle.
That is huge.
And, yes. And so that causes an awful lot of water to empty and coming out of the St. John River down the reversing falls into the Bay of Fundy. So the reversing falls were very exciting, to say the least. And I had some local New Brunswick friends paddling with me and a friend from Maine paddling with me. So paddling with people who know that section of river really, really well, know at what point in the tide cycle to be paddling, and being there to help rescue each other is really important. So I did not solo paddle that section. And it, like I say, it was very exciting. Lots of boils, big waves, whirlpools, and quite memorable. And then, of course, going down the Bay of Fundy with that same 29-foot rise and fall of the tide, that creates tidal rapids where there are rocks and reefs and other structures beneath the surface, and all that water's moving. So that was pretty exciting. But then once you get through the Bay of Fundy and I had an awful lot of fog also in the Bay of Fundy.
Oh, no.
Notorious for that. And
right.
had a pretty close call with a salmon aquaculture net system in the fog. Oh, yeah. And some weirs and some things like that. But once I got to the main island trail and started along the bold coast of Maine, there are vertical faced towering cliffs that go straight down to the water, and the surf breaks at the bottoms of the cliff. And it had actually been pinned down there for a couple of days waiting for storms to abate, and then continued. So not only do you have the big swells coming from the ocean, but you also have the current, which is going in still yet another direction, creating different types of waves. And then you have the reflection waves off the bottoms of the cliffs,
right,
coming in the opposite direction of the ocean swell. So it was very bumpy. And over the course of paddling the Maine coast, I experienced everything from glassy flat water, where the ocean meets the sky and you can't discern the difference between the two, and you get vertigo.
Wow.
That and 8 to 10 foot ocean swells and reflection waves off of cliffs. I mean, it had everything, and everything in between.
So how stable was your sea kayak? Were you doing a lot of bracing to keep it topside?
Actually, I really didn't do any survival braces, and I never had to roll. I'm actually have an uncanny sense of right side up, and
That's a good thing to have.
it is. It truly is. Truly is. And I credit a lot of play boating and whitewater boats to do that. And so my kayak is actually not a terribly stable kayak either. It's made by Stellar Kayaks and Surfs, and it's their 18-foot surf, which is 18 feet, is long and is narrow, and so it's incredibly fast. Okay,
right.
But a surf ski has a carved, a concave bucket seat in it, and it's a sit on top, and it's made for doing downwind paddling, open ocean, surfing ocean swell, and that's what it's designed for. So it's not very stable, but it's really fast.
Right.
So this particular sea kayak is their surf ski hull with a compartmentalized closed deck on top of it, where you use a spray skirt. So it's compartmentalized. It looks just like it's a sea kayak with a surf ski hull, and so it's really super fast. Well,
it sounds like it'd be a lot of fun too.
Yeah, it was. Absolutely. And it is paddling those. And when you have all of your expedition in your boat is a little on the heavy side, which also helps make it a little less twitchy and makes it more stable. Yeah.
Okay.
Makes it
little
more
ballast. As long as you put the weight at the bottom.
Right. And keep your head over your butt and not way out over the side. All right.
Wow. So contrast for us, if you would, the difference between the extended river journey and the getting on the saltwater and doing the saltwater journey. I mean, in both cases, you're on water, and one's salty and one's not, but rivers and oceans are not the same thing. How is the experience different?
Well, the experience is very, very different. The rivers on the Northern Forest Canoe Trail and even on the St. John is more of an intimate experience. You're not far from the shoreline at all. The open lakes, for the Northern Forest Canoe Trail, there are 22 rivers and streams, but there are also 56 lakes and ponds. So some of those lakes are actually quite large, like Lake Champlain, that borders New York and Vermont and goes up into Quebec. That's a pretty big lake.
That's an inland sea.
It is. It's absolutely an inland sea. Moosehead Lake in Maine, 40 miles long and 20 miles wide. I mean, it's a giant lake. There are Moose Lake McGunnock, the one that I had the blizzard in.
Right.
That's a pretty big lake. But even with those lakes, you have the option of paddling along the shoreline and on the leeward side, so you don't have to be exposed to the wave. On the ocean, you don't have that luxury. If you're too close to the shoreline, you're too near the surf zone. And that can be treacherous because often that's where it's more shallow and that's where there are rocks and reefs. If you're too far offshore and the wind is blowing in the wrong direction, it's blowing out to sea. If anything goes wrong, you could be headed toward Portugal. So there's the consequence of that. So there is a really big difference. Now, also just in terms of expedition travel, when you're in fresh water, you can filter your water for drinking water. And for
sure.
Cooking, okay. Yeah. When you're on the ocean, it's salt water, and you can't filter. So you have to carry all of your fresh water with you. So that's additional weight in the boat, and you have to be able to anticipate, where you're going to be able to stop to resupply your water in addition to your food. So there are a couple of key
two different skill sets.
Yes, and on the inland waters, all the predators are on shore, not on the water.
Right.
And on the ocean, a lot of the predators are on the water, not on the shore.
They're in the water with you. I was just thinking this, I think, last night, actually. We were up in the San Juan Islands, and we were lucky enough to see a whale leap out of the water, do one of the beautiful spy hops or whatever they call it. Anyway, I thought about being in a sea kayak, and if the whale got curious and decided to jump out of the water too close to me, what that would be like. And that's a terrifying thought. I mean, if something that big hits on top of you or right beside you, wow.
Yeah, beside you is better.
Okay, I'll go with that. Sounds good.
At least then you have a chance, to roll back up or get back in your boat. But yeah, so on the North Atlantic in Maine, I had left Black Island in Muscongas Bay. And it was first thing in the morning. The sun had just peeked over the horizon, and I like to get up early and get going before the wind comes up, so that I'm paddling on the calmest part of the day. And so, just as the sun comes up, I'm on the water, and I'm headed toward Pemaquid Point, and two minke whales come straight for me and pass right off of my bow and look at me as they go by, and I got goosebumps. I mean, it was incredible. And right behind them was a pod of harbor porpoise.
Really?
And they checked me out too. And
everyone's curious.
It was a magical experience. It was like, living a part of a Nat Geo epised. It was incredible. Wow. Yeah.
Well, that's so special.
But luckily, they did jump out of the water and me over.
Well, it would be a super rare occurrence, I would think. But is that something that you need to worry about?
Well, it's something to definitely think about. You do see videos of people getting too close to feeding whales. Like when they're bubble netting and they're feeding, and you get too close and you can actually get in their way, and so that's not good. You just need to be careful to keep your distance, a respectful distance, and usually it works out just fine. We've done a lot of paddling with whales in Baja and off California and off of Maine and in the Sea of Cortez, all over the place, and we haven't had any close calls. I just need to keep a respectful distance, and it's all good.
Oh, good. Well, we need to talk about some of the other locations that you paddled. I love this story. You're 1,500 miles. Dying Out There Is Not an Option is the book. Came out in 2016, is that right?
That is correct.
And so it's a 75-day, 1,500-mile expedition. Wonderful. People, get the book because we barely scratched the surface. But there's another book. We really need to hear about this one. It's a smaller expedition, but completely different setting. And I think this is one that Mason, the prior host of the Adventure Sports Podcast, talks quite a bit about canoeing in Florida. Mm-hmm. And he likes to take groups on canoe trips. And anyway, if we're going to die, it's probably here, Florida Everglades. This book just came out. And it was a 174-mile, 8-day trip. Tell us about that one.
Yes, I had wanted to do some trips in the Everglades, and my wife and I, for a short period of time, we lived on an island in Southwest Florida.
Fun.
And yeah, we lived on Pine Island, which is right across from Sanibel Island, and we looked straight across San Carlos Bay at Ding Darling National Wildlife Refuge, and it was an amazing place to live for paddling in the sea and for going to beaches and for fishing for tarpon and other sport fish. It was actually pretty amazing, and as the crow flies, only 50 miles from the Everglades.
Okay.
So where the Everglades begin. So my wife and I made an attempt at doing a week-long paddle on the Gulf side of the Everglades National Park, going down the Gulf of Mexico from Everglades City to Flamingo. And we were going to take 5 or 6 days to do that nice leisurely trip. But on the very first night, we had an unpredicted storm come, and with 30, 35 mile per hour wind, several inches of sideways blowing rain, really changed our plans because our tent failed and a lot of our gear got wet. And the forecast, because this was January, the forecast was for some upcoming nights in the high 40s, and we had wet gear.
Yeah, not good.
We said, well, if it's starting out this way, it's probably a message that we should just go home and try this another time. The mosquitoes were horrendous, and our gear was wet, so we went home. So fast forward. I really wanted to paddle the Everglades, and I wanted to see all of it. And the Everglades is very unique because a lot of people think of the Everglades as just being a swamp with a lot of alligators and mosquitoes. And it has all of that, but it has more because the whole length of the Everglade borders the Gulf of Mexico and Florida Bay, and so that's all
Okay.
saltwater, and that's all white sand beach island called Key, and it's really very beautiful. And there are bottlenose dolphin, there are manatee, and yes, there are saltwater crocodiles also.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very different than the inland portion of the Everglades, which is fresh. Some of it's brackish water. It's mostly fresh water. And there are more alligators than there are saltwater crocodiles. And it's mostly mangroves with no white sand beaches and no place really to go to shore, or very few places to go to shore.
Okay.
So they're very different experience. So I wanted to experience both parts of the park and the Everglades. So I recruited my adventure paddling buddy from New Brunswick, Canada, Adam Tremblay, who paddled with me through the reversing falls in New Brunswick on my Paddle Quest trip, my 1,500-mile trip. And we've done a lot of paddling. So we went to the Everglades together, and we paddled tandem open canoe and put all of our
Okay.
gear. We began in Everglades City, which is to the north and west in the Everglades. And we paddled down the Gulf of Mexico and went all the way down to Flamingo, which is the southernmost point of the park. And then we took the inland waterway, it's called the Wilderness Waterway, and came up the inside through all of the mangroves and the many, many creeks, rivers, ponds, and lakes that involves. And so round trip, it's 174 miles, and we did it over the course of 8 days. But we got to see the whole thing, and it was absolutely
Nice.
What a beautiful place, unique resource. It's crazy.
So what's it like paddling with saltwater crocodiles and alligators? Did you see a lot? Or was it just always a presence in the back of your mind?
Well, an interesting thing happened. There was a storm that was predicted to come through, and it was going to be a significant front coming through. And we saw that a couple days into our planned trip, we were going to be pinned down for a weather day.
Okay.
And we made the conscious decision to, instead of getting pinned down, say on a remote beach somewhere for a couple of days, that we would instead go ahead and do twice the mileage in one of the days and get it all the way to Flamingo. So doing a 3-day trip in just 2 days.
Okay.
And so that's what we planned to do. And when we got down to a critical decision point toward the south end of the Everglades, around Cape Sable, the wind really came up, and the waves were just too big, and the wave periods were too short for us to be able to navigate it with the open canoe. So we had to bail on going all the way around Cape Sable, backtrack, and take an alternative route, which is actually inland through Lake Ingraham. And Lake Ingraham actually just cuts off the end of Cape Sable. So
Okay.
you go through Lake Ingraham, and you come out to where you would have wound up had you continued around Cape Sable. But you still have miles to go to get to Flamingo, which of course is it's where there's a visitor center for the park, and there are accommodations and a restaurant and a campground.
All right.
So we preferred to overnight there and spend our layover day for weather at that location rather than a remote location. What we didn't realize was that Lake Ingraham is very, very tidal, and it was emptying while we were paddling up it, and this was late in the day. We started into Lake Ingraham about 5 o'clock in the evening, and it is also very, very shallow, and the mud on the bottom is incredibly viscous. So and it has kind of a serpentine channel through it. But if you try to cut a corner to make your route shorter and get to where you want to go more quickly, you wind up in shallow water, and the mud is so viscous that it sticks to your paddle and you can't even paddle with. So you have to stick to the deep channel. And
Okay.
so
In the current.
in the current, in the full throat of current. Absolutely. Yeah. And we finally made it all the way up to the inlet of Lake Ingraham, and we saw that there were thunderstorms off to over the Keys, over the Florida Key, to our south and east, and we saw that there were rain showers that looked like they might be coming our way. So we pulled over on a little muddy bank and put on our paddling jackets in case we got the rain. And by that time, it was really starting to get dark. So as we're pulling out to head up into the narrow channel that feeds the lake that's coming from Florida Bay, a fairly large bull shark surfaces right next to our boat, and we see it
Really?
entirety. It rolls next to our canoe and kind of looks at us and then sounds into the murk. And that was kind of an
Nice.
auspicious beginning to the narrow, more forested mangrove section of narrow waterway that we would be entering to then get out to Florida Bay and onto Flamingo. So we're paddling along, and it is completely dark, and something launches off the shoreline to our left.
Ooh.
And it was really big, and it was really close. Clearly, we were coming just around a little point where it was resting, and it launched itself. And crocodiles and alligators, they find safety in the water. And if you're
Right.
between where they're on land and the water, they'll come straight at you to get in the water. They're not charging you. They're not attacking. They're just seeking safety, and you're kind of in the way.
Right.
So the wake from this animal, which had to have been over 12 feet long, was enough of a wake to rock our canoe.
Oh, wow.
And that was our introduction to that section of our paddle. And
It's a little ominous, John.
yes, and we kept, and of course we wanted to use our night vision, so we had our headlamps off.
Right.
And so we couldn't see if we were being watched, but boy, did we feel like we were being watched.
Well, you probably were.
Oh, I'm absolutely 100% certain we were. And then the next day, when we got to Flamingo, we went to Flamingo Adventures, where they have a kayak rental, and they do guided kayaking out of there. And they also have
Okay.
rentals of other boats. We were talking to the guides, and we wanted to get some intelligence about what lies ahead on our route, about the inland waterway, the wilderness waterway, and, learn something about that. And we just told them, yeah, we got in last night after a really long day paddle. It was 17 and a half hours of paddling.
Wow.
And we got in at 10:30 at night, and they said, "Oh, so you've already been down the Wilderness Waterway?" And we said, No. We came through Lake Ingraham." And their jaws dropped, and they looked at us, and they said, "You did what? Not at night?" And we said, "Oh yeah, sure." And we just like it was something that is done, right?
Right.
They said, "That's Jurassic Park. Nobody goes there at night. That's where the dinosaurs live."
Yes.
And they proceeded to tell us about, saltwater crocodiles up to 14 feet long, and
Wow.
got a distance. It's like, oh boy, So we just kind of, Adam and I shot each other a glance, like, oh gosh, I guess we dodged a bullet.
Wow. Well, it is crazy. Jurassic Park is, that's the right word for it. Alligators, crocodiles did live with the dinosaurs. And
Yes.
latest research I heard says the reason they're still with us is because they were cold-blooded. They didn't need as much food. They could just go long periods of time with a very slow metabolism, and they didn't starve to death in bad climate change. So they made it through what the dinosaurs couldn't, and that's why they're still with us. But that's the real deal.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
Well, John, I could talk to you for another hour. That would be a lot of fun, but we're really running out of time here. Would you leave us with the why? Why do this? Why has it been meaningful to you? Why do you think it's valuable for others?
I've always just found this. I've found more connection outdoors than like in the big cities. I just gravitate toward wild environment, and I love the water in particular because I think it's just the most fantastic way to travel through remote places and see things that a lot of people just don't get an opportunity to see, and experience things that most people don't have an opportunity to experience. And I find spiritual grounding in those endeavors. And, I think that at my core, I'm most comfortable out there.
Sure.
And, and that's why I see. And I believe that because it's so enriching for me, that to share it with others is huge, because I may be the reason that somebody discovers that that's a happy place for them as well.
Right.
And that's, I began my whitewater raft guiding career in 1974, and I'm still whitewater raft guiding.
That's
And
great.
I've made a career of getting people into the outdoors, and those are just incredibly valuable experiences.
Well, that's fantastic. We really need to have you back on because there's so many more stories, I'm sure. And we didn't even talk about your whitewater raft guiding. We didn't talk about your whitewater kayaking. We didn't talk about, all the other things. But hey, you have gifted the planet with 2 books, right? And these 2 books can help people to live vicariously through you, and maybe they serve as an invitation, like you said. Maybe someone else will find their meaningful and happy place out there too. So the second book is If We're Going to Die, It's Probably Here, and that's the book about the Florida Everglades trip. And the first book was Dying Out There Is Not an Option, about the canoeing and sea kayaking trip. John, it's also cool you're doing some good things with these 2 books by giving part of the proceeds to some nonprofits. Can you explain what those are?
Yes, absolutely. For Dying Out Here Is Not an Option, about my 1,500-mile solo canoe and kayak expedition, there are 2 nonprofits that benefit from a portion of the sales. One is called the Northern Forest Canoe Trail, which is an organization that has formalized that 740-mile paddling trail and created guidebooks and maps, and they also maintain day use and overnight sites along the way. So they provide resources for people who want to paddle the entire trail or sections of it. So there's that. And then also the Main Island Trail Association. And what the Main Island Trail Association does is it maintains day use and overnight sites and provides guide resources also for people who want to enjoy the Maine coast and utilize those mainland and island sites. And then for my book about the Everglades, If We're Going to Die, It's Probably Here, Friends of the Everglades benefits from a portion of the sales of that book, and their mission is the conservation and stewardship of Florida's Everglades.
Wow, cool. Well, thank you for doing that. And it's such a neat thing when people get behind a cause that matters. And the Everglades, such an amazing, magical place. So few places like it on Earth. I think it's certainly a treasure worth taking care of. So, yeah, thanks for doing that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Well, for all the listeners out there, I say this every show, or almost every show, find your own adventure, whatever it is, and get out there and have some fun.